Well, we could talk about that another time. You
Go
have
on.
a phone in about that. And his parents came here in the 60s. He was born here, blah, blah, blah. But what's significant is that his parents were very much interested in getting him a ticket. You might call it a golden ticket into the British middle class. And so they put everything they could into sending him and his brothers to public school and hoping that they could make his class, not his education, I mean the class, the connections that came from public school.
This is aspiration in the simplest sense.
Yeah,
really.
so I'm specifically not talking about exam results and grades. I'm talking about the people, the milieu. They thought that if they bought that, it would offset his colour.
Right, gosh.
And so that's his story.
Yes.
And then my story is working class parents didn't go to uni, EastEnders left school at 16 because there wasn't any money, etc., etc.
Yeah.
My sister and I, first generation university, so we had the brains and did well sort of academically, but undoubtedly have a working class background.
But remember, you could go to university without taking out epic amounts of debt, which isn't true anymore. So that's another factor we've missed, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I know you don't have enough time for this, but yes, that's a whole other cul-de-sac because there's no way either of us would have been to university if you had to pay. I mean, it just wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
Whereas that wouldn't be the case with my husband. And so what then happened is my sister and I were able to be very socially mobile because we got the right qualifications.
Right.
Perhaps not if we tried to enter the law or a profession where your class background mattered more.
Okay.
But there's no doubt that my parents were socially mobile and so were we. But my husband has not been because he has hit this race ceiling many times in his life. And the other thing I want to draw in, which I think does kind of make the point rather than me just sort of playing a tiny violin about what may have happened to him, is we have a daughter who's obviously mixed race.
I do.
My daughter.
Yes.
But she's white presenting. Horrible phrase, but it explains how she looks.
Right.
And she went to a state school. So her parents didn't pay for the golden ticket, etc., etc. He found that quite difficult because he thought that might be the only way, but I convinced him with charm and argument that, it would be fine. Yes. She went to a state school, then went to Oxford, did a master's at Oxford, is kind of flying in the stratosphere. And she would attribute that not just to being bright and working hard, but her peers at Oxford, who were people of colour, did not have the same success.
Oh, really?
And even the ones who went to public school and knew how to drink the port glass, which she didn't, and where the knives and forks were, have a much harder time. Because what she had, she might not have had class capital, but she had white cultural capital. And so I think the 40 years decline is a lot more to do with the fact that there are many, many more people who aren't white.
Oh,
who
chasing
as socially mobile as white people who've had the same education.
Frustrated aspiration, not actually frustrated by something that has changed within society, but frustrated by something that has stayed the same. We're just seeing an increase in the number of frustrated people.
Yeah, and just to sort of shoot down my own argument, it has also changed during that time because one of my husband's brothers is 10 years younger than him. And his experience of racism and a race ceiling, if you like, in a career is entirely different.
Oh, well, that's good.
He's had a much easier ride, in inverted commas, and not faced as many barriers because within that 10 or 15 years, British society did become less racist.
Unfortunately,
than it was before.
Direction of traffic.
I think in the last 3 or 4 years, we've gone backwards again.
6 or 7. I think you might be right, unfortunately. But I hadn't thought of it like that, and that's a really helpful perspective, Liz. Thank you. You give my love to Mia, yeah? Make sure.
Yeah, I will do. I mean, she works in this area now. She's literally working every day to try and get people of colour further up the ladder.
And there it is. That idea of the ladder is still very, very real, but it's possibly not the same ladder for everybody, which is a crucial part of understanding all of this. And the notion of mobility being frustrated by ethnicity or sexuality or any other kind of minority status is not going to be the most obvious explanation for the broader phenomenon, but it's going to be an absolutely intrinsic part of it. 11:55 is the time. Thank you, Liz. Tom is in Doncaster. Tom, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Pleasure to speak to you. Long-term listener, first-time caller.
Thank you, mate. Welcome aboard.
Thank you. I'd just like to say that I think nowadays there's more layers to the sort of generic working middle upper class.
Yes.
And I think that the general working class aspire to move up one little ladder within working class rather than the impossible dream over the clouds of middle class and upper class. And I think of my own parents. They're quite a good example of when you think of class and social mobility. So my dad had 3 jobs in his working life. He was a work down pit, he was a window cleaner, and he was a postman.
Right.
My mum was a dinner lady and a postwoman, but they both managed to retire at 55.
Yeah, you see.
And and this year they're going on or been on 9 holidays this year, which I call them Judith Chalmers and Alan Wicker.
9? But that's because they had fantastic pensions, right? Which is not going to be true of your children or our children.
Or me.
or us actually, and that. So you say there's more and more layers. I think there's fewer and fewer.
Yeah.
I think there's either people that you're bringing retirement into it now, which is slightly complicating factors. But you can either live comfortably with no work or you can't.
Well, yeah. They obviously got to a point where they wanted to maintain their sort of the standard of living, so they worked to that point, and then
they knew they were over the line. They knew they were golden. What class would they say? What class would they describe themselves as? Because by some of the signifiers you've described, they're working class all the way.
They're obviously I'd call them working class because the background, miners and.
But socioeconomically, they're golden.
Yeah, me and my wife, we both went to university.
Yes.
We both got white jobs. We're both earning more money now than my dad ever earned in his life annually.
But
we've done to retire at 55.
Yeah.
And that goes on 9 holidays a year when they're at 64.
Yeah. So who is who? Who is it? You're the middle class one. You're the working class one. But they're sort of waving to you from their latest cruise ship while you're putting in another shift at the metaphorical coalface as opposed to the actual coalface, which is where your dad worked back in the day. Perfect, I think. Really perfect illustration of what I was trying to pin down. I'll squeeze in one more. I've only got a minute, Terry, so you'll have to make it snappy and Nuneaton. What would you like to say?
Okay, I'll make it quite quick. Sometimes what I believe is that it's where you're born, the time period you're born, the social events which is happening within that region that allows you social mobility. I'll give a quick example. I went to university. Dropped out because I was trying to do microelectronics. They were teaching me electrical stuff.
Right.
Then I went for an interview for a prestigious company. Then when I got into the interview, I thought there's no way I'm going to get this because of my background.
Right.
Turns out that the guy that's interviewing me had a social connection with me based on where he was brought up. I got the job.
Yeah, and the point there, Terry, whether you intend it or not, and I think you probably do, is that if you go to a school like mine, then the likelihood of ending up in a room with someone interviewing you with whom you have a social connection is absolutely huge. And that's one thing we've missed entirely from this conversation. I'll tell you how you divide British society. I literally, and this brings in every single factor of the conversation that we've had, except perhaps Liz's, actually, although that would also apply. It's the reason why her parents-in-law sent her husband to the school they did. There are 2 types of people in the United Kingdom. There are people, when they meet somebody new, who ask what school they went to. And there are people who don't. And that, I think, is the most fundamental distinction and division in our so-called class structure. And that is the end of my TED Talk. Mystery Hour's next.
This is LBC from Global. Leading Britain's conversation. Mystery Hour with James O'Brien.
Is it that time already? And not just, it's probably because I got the day wrong yesterday. I'm surprised that Thursday, 12 noon on a Thursday, has crept up upon us so quickly. A lot of love coming in for Liz, actually. I should pass that on, the final caller there, which was a particularly pertinent contribution to the conversation. But that line about asking people what school they went to, which I somewhat uncomfortably was my own, is probably the key distinguisher between what we would loosely refer to as classes. 3 minutes after 12 is the time. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. And we are diving headfirst into Mystery Hour. Your weekly opportunity to achieve the sort of satisfaction not ordinarily available anywhere on your radio dial. The reason I sound a bit distracted is because the switchboard just exploded. Some weeks it does and some weeks it doesn't, and it doesn't seem to have anything to do with what I say or do. which is a little bit discombobulating, to be honest with you. I would remind you that there is a thingamajig, a wonderful prize of a Mystery Hour board game. It's a really, really good board game, actually. I think I made a mistake of being so gobsmacked by the fact that a board game had sprung organically from this sort of slightly odd radio feature that for a while some people thought I was joking. They thought Keith was a figment of my imagination, and I'm not yet prepared to confirm or deny whether that is true or false. But the board game is 100% real. Go and have a look at it at mysteryhour.co.uk. And if you're not lucky enough to win one by being my favourite contributor of today, you can buy your own. 4 minutes after 12 is the time. We will, I think, just crack on. Have I forgotten everything? Terms and conditions are at lbc.co.uk. So that's two websites I should always mention at the outset of Mystery Hour. lbc.co.uk for the terms and conditions regarding the competition to win a copy of the board game, and mysteryhour.co.uk to get your own copy of it as well. And you're not allowed to Google anything, but I haven't mentioned that for months. It seems to have sort of become self-policing, I think. Anyway, we shall see. Alice is in Northwich. Alice, question or answer?
Question, please, James.
Carry on, Alice.
How does a self-sourcing pudding work?
Ah, that's a good question.
Thank you.
So I think I know, but I mean, shush. So you mean the batter, a homogeneous batter goes into the oven and it comes out with a sponge top and a soggy bottom and a liquid bottom?
Well, yes, you put the batter in the bowl, and then you have to pour a mixture of boiling water and sugar over the top of it before it goes in the oven. And then miraculously, whilst it's cooking, the liquid goes to the bottom and the pudding rises to the top.
Wow, but if you left it in for longer, it would be a cake.
Well, it'd be a very soggy cake.
Yeah, but I think I'm very, very partial to a self-sourcing pudding, although I've never called it that before. It's the same stuff, or is it? Or no, because it could be. Is it creating a sponge that rises through and leaves behind a liquidy residue?
That's the clever thing. So I know it's chemistry, but I can't quite work out how it is that the pudding manages to set and rise through the liquid instead of just. Yeah, but
I'm not sure it is. I'm not
sure. Going soggy.
Yeah, I'm not sure that is what's happening. I think that the crust is forming on the top like a pie, and that the liquid underneath is actually still the same stuff that the crust is made of. It's just uncooked.
But the sauce is not just boiling water and sugar.
No.
The sauce also has the flavour. So if you make a chocolatey one, you get a lovely chocolatey sauce.
Yes, but you've got a lovely chocolatey sponge as well.
Well, you do have that, yes. But I mean,
so it's the same. Now I want to use the word sauce, but it's different meaning. SOURCE. The source of the sauce is the same sauce as the sponge, Alice.
Now you're just getting ridiculous.
We got Dick Emery's son rang in the other day. We need him to come back on and go, saucy. And we'd be exactly where. But it is the same sauce, isn't it? The sauce and the sponge have the same sauce.
Yes, but you have to get the proportions absolutely correct, or else it wouldn't work.
Yes.
And
that's what recipes are for.
Well, of course, we've got a recipe, but that doesn't explain the chemistry of it.
No, it doesn't. We need a chef.
You might have a chef listening.
There's always chefs listening, but they'll be on service now. It's 8 minutes after 12, so I'm sure one of them will take a moment out. Right, you're on, Alice. I shall try and get you. How do self-sourcing puddings self-source?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. 8 minutes after 12 is the time. Chris is in Exeter. Chris, question or answer?
Question, please.
Carry on.
So, when you have a drink, any liquid,
yes.
Does the body prioritise where that liquid is needed most?
I like this question. So if you've got a massive hangover and your cheeks are like sandpaper, and you neck a jug of water, why don't your cheeks get more juicy immediately?
Yeah, because they say when you have a dry mouth, that's the first sign of dehydration. That's your body saying, have a drink.
Is it?
When you, Ray Mears and the other fella. Mm-hmm. But whenever I have a dry mouth and I have a drink, my mouth isn't. So
how does how does the water know where to? So where does the water? So you drink, you're dehydrated. Where does the water go first?
Yeah, how does the body prioritise it, or does it prioritise it?
It's a great question. It's a really good question. 9 minutes after 12 is the time. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need to provide the answer. I stopped making the promise for a one laugh out loud moment every week on this. But it's nice that Phil is still counting and he's already had his. I used to say, I might start saying it again, I guarantee that by 1 o'clock today, you will know more than you do now. This is every Thursday from 12. I like to think it applies to every hour that we spend together, but this hour in particular. And also, you will have one laugh out loud moment. I'll just take this. I don't deal with text much during this part of the programme, but I'll tell you, what the heck is a self-sourcing pudding? I should have explained. So you've got a bowl, and you put your batter in a bowl, like one homogeneous bowl full of batter, and then you put it in the oven. And when you take it out, you've got a sponge pudding top and a wet sauce bottom. So a self-saucing pudding. So it's not like you put your sauce in and you put your pastry on top or your sponge on top. It's just one thing. It's one, what's the word I'm looking for? It's one thing. It's not one ingredient. It's one thing. It's one substance that you make. You mix together flour, eggs, cocoa, flour, what else? Sugar, lots of sugar. And you stick it in the oven, thinking that it will come out like a cake or a mousse, but actually it's cake on top, liquid underneath. Business at the front, party at the back. It's the mullet of puddings, isn't it, really? Matt's in Chesterfield. Matt, question or answer?
Question, please, James.
Carry on.
I want to know why we find beauty in inanimate objects. What's the point? What's the evolutionary benefit to find a waterfall beautiful, for example?
What a lovely
or a sports
question.
Car.
What a beautiful question.
Thank you.
I'm just trying to think what it might be. I mean, we find people attractive, don't we? I know they're not inanimate, but could it be a similar sort of beauty?
See, you can't procreate with a stately home or a sunset. What's the point?
Don't tell Jacob Rees-Mogg that. The stately home bit, he's still trying to procreate with a penny farthing every Friday night. What is the? Sorry, they're looking. What do you remember lockdown?
Yeah.
The thing that struck me about lockdown, I didn't notice it until about halfway through, is that I really missed big skies.
Uh-huh.
I really missed that sense of smallness in the universe. You know, that's. And so it's going to be something to do with mental health, isn't it? It's going to have something to do with releasing some hormone or just relaxing something beautiful, looking at something beautiful, giving us some...
I lived in the Middle East, James, for a while, and when I flew back to Manchester, the green from the aeroplane window was pleasing to my eyes.
Yeah. You're on. Why do we derive pleasure from the view, really? Isn't it? Regardless of
the view and a waterfall. And
that's still a view. That's still a view. The view you're looking at. It's a view. Something you see gives you emotional pleasure.
Indeed.
Well, I like that. I mean, who's going to be able to answer that? God only knows. But we will endeavour to find out both what the answer is and who's going to answer it. 0345 6060 973. Thank you, Matt. 12:12 is the time. John's in Islington. John, question or answer?
There's a question for you, James.
Carry on, John.
Large vehicles, lorries.
Whoa! No, hang on, Keith. This is Jake's not done this before, mate. We've got a inexperienced producer on this programme, deeply experienced elsewhere, who's going to be looking out for motoring questions. It can't be him. That's not the point, is it? John, we don't really do motoring questions, mate.
Yeah, well, you'll do this one because you love me.
Is it like hardcore, absolutely inescapable motoring question? We can't pretend it's philosophy or something else.
Yeah, it's more specifically about their wheels. It's
a question about bloody wheels?
It's wheels.
All right, then. Well, you're here now, aren't you? It'd be rude to bin you off 7 times. Go on.
Big vehicles, hubcaps, the front wheels stick out and the back wheels go in.
Right.
Why? You Google any picture of a London bus or a lorry and you'll see the front wheels, hubcaps stick out.
Yeah.
Go in.
Yeah. That's not as bad as I thought it was going to be, actually, John.
Told you.
No, you did. So the hub, is it the hubcap or just the wheel nuts? The whole cap sticks out.
It's the whole cap, yeah.
So if you were looking at it like straight ahead, you've got the tyre, and then you've got a bit sticking out below and above the bottom and the top and the bottom of the tyre, and then at the back of the vehicle, you wouldn't see anything except the tyre.
It goes in, yeah, exactly.
All right, I don't know. I'll find out for you. How am I going to jot this one down in my notes? So John, wheel hubs. Wheel hubs. Wheel hubs is fine. Yeah, hubs. Thank you, John. Don't take that as any form of softening on my rule that we never have motoring questions. Keith points out we have actually done them. What was the motoring topic we did the other day? We did ULEZ. Yeah, but why people love their cars isn't a motoring topic, Keith. It's philosophy and psychology, isn't it? It's a sort of human nature. It's a question about why we do the things we do. It's not a question about parking tickets or motorway lanes. It's 12:15. 12:17 is the time. I don't normally interrupt Mystery Hour for politics, but someone called Andrew Bowie, who has got a tick, so he must be an actual MP up in Aberdeenshire and Kincardine, has tweeted this morning, "We'll never impose unnecessary and heavy-handed measures on the British people." And then he's got a lovely red cross, like a big X, and it says, "No taxes on eating meat." And then another X, "No new taxes to discourage flying. No diktats about sorting your rubbish into 7 different bins or car sharing. No orders to get expensive insulation upgrades." There are days and there are days, aren't there, where you sort of think, I know how mad everything is. I know Brexit broke the relationship between observable reality and political rhetoric. I know that democracy can never recover until people telling lies stop being rewarded with the votes of the people being lied to. And I know that none of that can happen while most of the media consists of sycophants and clients. But the day on which an actual Prime Minister would come out and announce a ban on something that didn't exist is not a day I ever thought would dawn. I already worry that with 6 weeks until publication, my new book, How They Broke Britain, is going to be out of date because the madness, the lunacy, the absurdity and the corruption that it describes is in danger of being overtaken by events. We're all right so far, but I wish I'd had time to include, even in the last line of the book, it would have been a perfect last line, because Liz Truss is the last chapter. It ends with her being slung out and Rishi Sunak coming in, and I could have said within a year or within 18 months, Rishi Sunak would be promising to ban things that didn't exist. So early hopes that he might mark some sort of change with the recent past were dashed. They were dashed the minute he reappointed Suella Braverman, of course, but the level of madness, I'm afraid, is the only word I can think of, that it takes not only to announce a ban of something that doesn't exist, but then to get these weird little MPs and client journalists queuing up to cheer it. He's banned meat taxes. Oh, good old Rishi banning meat taxes. Where are the meat? There aren't any. Some days, as I say, you just do not know, do you? 19 minutes after 12 is the time. I think we'll put Andrew Bowie in Idiot's Corner. Although he hasn't contacted the show directly, his tweet has flashed in front of me. There's a rather brilliant reply to it, actually, by a Twitter account called Supertansky, it's Tanya, who's rung into the programme a couple of times. I enjoy her work on Twitter. She says, "Andrew, help. I'm stuck in a car share on the way to the airport with 7 bins full of meat. This is serious. Please reply. It's very hot in here due to all the black market insulation. This is an emergency." That's very funny. 20 minutes after 12. Richard's on the Algarve. Richard, question or answer?
It's a question.
Yes.
I would like to know how words that are peculiar to foreign languages are signed in British Sign Language.
Why would you like to know that, if you don't mind me asking?
No, that's a very good question. It's because my wife says it's a stupid question, so you have to ring that bloke up on the radio and he'll find the answer.
But you framed the question before your wife was so unconscionably rude to you, Richard. So where did your interest come from?
Yeah, it was just one of those things. We were talking about sign language. My wife has wanted to learn sign language. I said, well, so we have words in Portuguese that don't translate directly. I said, well, how would you say that?
In English, like what?
Well, in Portuguese, the best word I can think of is saudades, which is, it's often translated as homesick, but it's not homesick. Because, for example, you would say that you have saudades for your mum's cooking, or saudades for the smell of the grass when your dad's cutting it. It's not homesick.
So it's a relationship between missing something and home, but not missing home itself.
Yeah, you can even say you have saudade for a meal that you haven't eaten for a long time. It's not necessarily homesick. It's a complicated...
So it's nostalgia. It's a great word. So the Greeks have a word philoxenia, which we would translate as hospitality, but it means much more than hospitality. It's almost like a sense of duty, a sense of responsibility to a guest, to look after them. I imagine the answer will be you just go for the nearest word. But I would ask.
That's not a translation. I mean, for example, I'll give you one more example.
I know it's not.
Schadenfreude. How would you translate that into English, into BSL?
Yeah.
That's a tricky one.
It is a tricky. I mean, because you couldn't say taking pleasure in other people's misfortune because you'd be here all week.
Exactly.
So peculiar foreign words peculiar to a foreign language that don't have a direct British translation. How would they work in sign language?
Yes.
I like that.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much. I think your wife is wrong as well, Richard, for the record.
She's often wrong, but it's rare I can tell her.
Yeah, exactly. Be careful. 22 minutes after 12. Of course, this is Mystery Hour, so there is always the danger of a violent reverse after I say something's very silly and it turns out it's not, or I say that's a very good question and events transpire to deliver the conclusion that it doesn't. Colin gets this. A few people have sent in various iterations of this joke, but I'm going to choose Colin's partly because I forgot to read them out earlier. Colin writes that in the 2024 Conservative Manifesto there is going to be a ban on dragons and magic. I think that we're possibly giving them ideas there, Colin, and of course a ban on dragons might deplete the cabinet somewhat, so they'd have to be careful about that. It is 23 minutes after 12. Neil is on in South Hams in Devon. Neil, question or answer?
Answer, James.
Carry on.
42.
That's not the question, though, is it? Clever clogs.
No, it's not. No, the answer's about the self-sourcing pudding.
Now, hang on. I may have made a mistake here, because some people are telling me there's a self-sourcing pudding where you pour a sugar and water syrup over the batter and cook it. Whereas I was describing something different from that. What are you describing? The one I described or the one that my texts are telling? Yeah. Okay, well, you go first.
So what I think you're talking about is hot chocolate fondant, which is the chocolate sponge with the chocolate sauce in the middle.
That's what I was talking about, but I'm not sure that's what Alice was talking about. But go on.
I can explain the other one for you as well.
Oh, perfect. Go on then.
So the hot chocolate fondant, the vast majority of people, certainly in the UK, will have seen is, you were right, an uncooked sponge.
Yeah.
The original came from a chef called Michel Bras, who was a 3 Michelin star chef in France, and his recipe was called biscuit coulant. So basically, the outside was a denser sponge. It had things like rice flour in it, things like that. And then it had a ganache in the middle. So you would make the ganache, so the chocolate ganache like you would normally make, but instead of using cream, you would use water and cream. So when you then chilled it, so you had to chill it sort of almost above freezing so it didn't go grainy, you then put that into the ring, which was lined with parchment paper. You put the batter in to make for the sponge on the outside, and then you cut the ganache and you put that in the middle and you baked it. So it was two separate entities. It was two.
So that's not a self-sourcing pudding. That's the opposite of a self-sourcing.
Well, it is. Yeah. No, because when you cut into it, it had a proper chocolate sauce inside it.
But it's not self-sourcing.
Whereas, well, yeah, it is, because when you present it, it comes out and it looks like the chocolate fondant that most people in this country would see, which would look like a sponge.
I don't want to get stuck on this. But I think we understood a self-sourcing pudding. Oh, okay. I think I understand what you mean, but that's definitely not what Alice meant. She's
talking about where like a creme caramel.
No, she's not. She's talking about like I mean, you're the expert, but you make a batter.
Yeah.
And when you take it out, you only stick a bowl of one thing in the oven, but when it comes out, there's a sauce underneath and a sponge on top.
So basically what happens, the batter then separates.
So it's uncooked. So it's uncooked batter at the bottom.
Yes, sort of, yeah. Because what happens is when you obviously heat the batter up, the batter becomes less viscose, and then the sauce elements drop to the bottom. So as you continue to cook it, the sponge obviously then sits on top of the sauce elements. When you turn the bowl out, the sauce.
So there's stuff in the ingredients. So they do separate the stuff. So if you did a chemical analysis of the sponge and the sauce, they wouldn't be identical.
No.
Okay.
No, they would still contain same elements.
Of course.
But the heavier ones would obviously then drop to the bottom.
And there wouldn't be any baking powder or flour in the sauce, would there? Or nowhere near as much, because that's cooked now.
Because that. So the baking powder
this is really interesting. Butter. So you're talking butter, sugar, eggs, flour, and then carbonated soda and baking powder, or a combination of both, and then your flavour, whether it's chocolate or lemon or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yes.
Caramel.
Yes. Yeah.
Got it. Now, what the other one is where you make a batter and you put a sort of syrup on the top of it before you put it in the oven. Have you heard it? It would be the same principle, actually, wouldn't it? Actually,
it would just all it would happen would be, so if you're putting it on the top, and then in the bowl, when you turn the bowl out, the sauce is then at the bottom of the bowl. So when you turn it out, it then sauces over the top, like the creme caramel we talked about earlier, where the caramel. Because if you make a creme caramel, this would be the similar sort of thing. When you actually make the creme caramel, you pour hot caramel into the ramekin, and it's hard. It's rock hard.
That's right.
So then when you cook it and you turn it out, it then has the caramel sauce. But if you've not effectively done anything to it other than cook it in a bain-marie in the oven. So, it's the same principle. So all you're doing is you are cooking it in the oven.
The sauce
elements.
Yeah, except that the sauce hasn't gone through the custard, has it?
No, because
in the way that it has on a self-saucing pudding.
So in the creme caramel, the caramel's on the bottom, and then you pour your custard mix on the top, bake it in the bain-marie. The caramel so it then taints what is the bottom.
Yes.
When the custard sets.
I don't know that this is helpful to the self-saucing question bit. It's great to know. I don't think it's the same at all.
Well, your self-saucing pudding...
Because the caramel would have to pass all the way through the self-saucing pudding. I mean, the mystery is, how come it's so dry at the top and wet at the bottom? And the answer is, well, it rose up, dried out, and the wet bit stayed at the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
And even if you pour a syrup over the top of it after you've put it in the oven, the same thing is happening. It's rising up, and the syrup is falling through the sponge, through the developing sponge.
When it heats.
Through the developing sponge.
So as if you ever do this with your kids, like cook, cupcakes or whatever, put a frozen cherry on top of the cupcake mix, and then put it in the oven, and you will see the frozen cherry drop, because when you heat up, before the sponge mix solidifies and aerates, it goes liquid.
It can get the chance to fall through it.
That's essentially what happens with your syrup.
Even though it sits on the top at the start, by the time it is cooking, it changes physically and it falls through. Qualifications?
27 years as a Michelin-starred... 27 years in Michelin-starred kitchens, and now an award-winning web designer.
That'll do nice. Well, that's an interesting career change, but it's earned you a round of applause, Neil. Well played, mate.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Talk all day about pudding. I mean, creme caramel is a really nice thing to make, but my goodness me, the egg yolks and cream and sugar, that is like... that is some serious cooking when you're making that, some serious cholesterol. My dad used to call it, you have a fry-up sometimes, he'd call it a heart attack on a plate. And when you make creme caramel, or even the late Gary Rhodes had some amazing recipes. He made a bread and butter pudding. He had a recipe for a bread and butter pudding where the custard was basically creme caramel custard. I don't know whether that's normal or not. It's the only one I've ever made. But my goodness me, it made your teeth itch. I think we might have... Alice in Northwich is pleased. She's texted me. She's happy with the answer. I think we've opened a box of frogs there. A box of frogs? I think we've opened a Pandora's box of frogs. I don't know on the self-saucing pudding. Neil definitely deserved his round of applause, but judging by my inbox, there are many other directions in which we could have gone. Questions still in need of answers include, when you're dehydrated and you glug some water, where does it go first? Which part of you gets rehydrated first? Don't say your mouth, obviously. but as in the rehydration process once you've swallowed it. Don't say your tummy. You know what I mean, all right? So, okay. Why do we derive pleasure from looking at beautiful things? Oh, that reminds me, you can enjoy the show on YouTube now. I don't know whether you were aware of this, but you can see the whole show on YouTube with sort of interruptions and I think even advertisement breaks removed. So that is something you could watch later while pondering the question of why you derive such enormous internal pleasure, such emotional joy from just literally watching beautiful things. Try it with the sound off. See what happens. That would be my. In fact, now that I'm talking about it, for anyone who is watching on YouTube, I'm now looking for the first time this week down the barrel of the camera. I hope that wasn't too frightening for you. Wheel hubs. John's question in Islington. Motoring. Already getting quite a lot of criticism for it not being a very good question, but, John is a stalwart of the show. Why do the wheel hubs on the front wheels of big vehicles poke out while on the back wheels they poke in? And so, this was a good question from Portugal. In British Sign Language, how do you sign a word that is unique and peculiar to a foreign language, i.e. a word that doesn't translate, like saudade in Portuguese or philoxenia in Greek? Kevin's in Gillingham. Kevin, question or answer?
It's a question.
Carry on.
Why can't I get a hangover?
Are you serious?
Yep.
How hard have you tried?
Yeah, I'm 48 years old. So, yeah, seriously tried.
And so after a proper skinful, you wake up the next morning and you're not feeling anything?
No, nothing at all. I've always been curious why. And my friends hate me.
I bet they do. I do too, and we've only just met. That's incredible. I mean, do you sleep the same?
Yeah, sleep exactly the same, and then I get up for work. I do early morning shifts. I work in a casino, so I have to be there. Do you
always drink? Do you drink a lot of water when you're drinking alcohol? Do you have any little tactics when you're on the lam?
No, I drink a lot of coffee.
While drinking alcohol, or the rest of the time?
I'll do a couple of espressos while I'm out.
Okay.
And that's it.
And this has been true since you were a teenager?
Yeah.
I almost feel that you might be of interest to medical science, Kevin. I'm just imagining whether I'm slightly frightened of what my life might have been like if I didn't suffer from hangovers. Well, that's remarkable. A couple of texts already saying my wife doesn't get hangovers either. It's so infuriating. Have you ever asked a doctor or a I don't know, a landlord?
No, just always enjoyed taking a mick out my friends when we go for breakfast the following morning after.
And they're in pieces?
Yeah.
They're giving it the whole never again, don't ever, never, and you're just sitting there, I bet you
100%, never again. And then I'll basically drive home and, go to work.
Keith thinks you might always be drunk. You could be existing in a state of permanent drunkenness, but clearly not. No, 2 more texts coming in. All right, you're on. So why does Kevin and indeed Renata and our anonymous texter's wife and others, why do they never get hangovers? Good grief. I don't. Well, it's fascinating. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. Tony's in Norwich. Tony, question or answer?
Answer.
Carry on, Tony.
It's a question about the where water goes in your body.
Yes.
It's osmoregulation.
Nearly. What does that mean?
Basically, I think the chap that...
It's not a great phone line. I think it's just gone. Also, Tony sounded a bit distracted, I felt. I don't know whether that's fair or not, but we can add the word osmo. Do we still have for that other word that sounds a bit... Do we still have that? All right, keep on your toes, mate, because I think it might be popping up today. We shall see. Tim's in Hackney. Tim, question or answer?
Hi, James. So, answer to the deriving beauty from nature.
You mean just getting a real joy out of just looking at beautiful things?
Yeah.
Oh, hang on. That reminds me. You can watch the show on YouTube now. If you just do a little search, you can find that we've been up now for a couple of weeks, so there's probably about 20 hours, well, more. Anyway, sorry, Tim. I don't know why those two things just keep appearing together in my mind. What would you like to say?
Well, it's quite simple. So I'm a photographer, and it's all about composition. So it occurs in photos and in nature.
Really?
You've got, rules of third, golden ratio particularly, but... it's like there was a photo that went viral in New Year's years ago where I think it was in Manchester High Street, where so much was going on, and everyone was like, "This is an amazing photo," and they couldn't work out why. And it just uses golden ratio, and you see that occurring in nature just as much as you do of a photo.
Really?
Yeah. You've got, so for example, shells or symmetry as well. It's all to do with composition and how that you can capture.
I can see it on a photo, but I mean, looking at why a waterfall then, and not a I don't know, a microphone.
A microphone uses symmetry.
Yeah, but I never get a kick out of looking at a microphone like I do out of looking at a waterfall.
No, but you could argue that the design of that would be in the same way.
Somebody somewhere might prefer looking at a microphone to a waterfall.
Well,
and what's the evolutionary advantage? Sorry, it sounds like I'm badgering you. It's a far too aggressive line of inquiry for a perfectly innocuous contribution to the... Why can't I look at a microphone? Where's the evolutionary advantage from getting a kick out of looking at beautiful things? Or just a nice view?
Well, there's also, I suppose, colour theory comes into it too. I'm not too well versed on that to define that. But in terms of composition, I feel like that's...
I don't think it is. I think you're barking up the wrong waterfall. I don't because taking a beautiful picture is very different from getting because you could take a beautiful picture of a microphone, but nobody is ever going to stop in their tracks as they walk past this studio and go, "Oh, look at that microphone." But they are with a waterfall.
Does that not depend on the type of microphone, though?
No.
Because you've got the old sort of vintage 60s microphones compared to a modern day one.
Mate, come on.
Possibly. But it still uses the basic sort of symmetry in its design.
I don't think. What about like a picture of a sky? A lovely picture of a sky, or you're standing on a beach looking at the
horizon,
or a tree.
Horizon,
a beautiful
for example,
tree. I like bridges, a crane. I like looking at cranes, but that's possibly closer to microphones.
Crane. If you've got a crane, you've got the actual arm up. Again, that would still use the golden ratio.
But stop saying golden ratio. Where is the evolutionary advantage in getting a kick out of looking at things? That was the real question.
Yeah. But it still occurs in nature for it to still... I don't know.
But why? Why have we evolved to enjoy views? Is the question. Not necessarily why do we like views, but why have we evolved to enjoy views?
Are they not the same answer though?
I don't think so, but I'm not 100% confident. So I'm going to give you half a round of applause. All right.
Cheers.
What happened then? We just ran away with you, didn't it? Unbelievable. Tim, you got more than you deserve there, but I won't demand that you return it. Luke is in Cardiff. Luke, question or answer?
It's an answer.
Carry on.
Lovely. So I'll take us off where the last guy left off with osmoregulation.
Osmoregulation. Careful, Keith. Carry on.
There we go. So where your body senses a drop in water, so most of your water is held inside your cells.
Yeah.
As they use up water, they draw water from outside the cells, which is just in tissues.
Yeah.
And then your body senses a drop in blood pressure. So as you sense a drop in blood pressure, your body will stimulate certain hormones, which will drive thirst and so on, and stimulate your kidneys to retain more water. And you want to drink them because you're getting thirsty. And your body doesn't really prioritize water anywhere but in your blood and in your tissues. So as you drink, it's absorbed through your large intestine and then later in your smaller intestine, fills up your blood, it's distributed around your body.
And is are there different forms of dehydration then? If you've had a skimful the night before, or if you've just run a marathon, then you'll have dehydration in different parts of your body, perhaps?
Not necessarily. It's mainly in your cells,
right.
But it's mostly it's.
Yeah, but I meant the cells in different parts of your body, or not? Am I being a bit thick?
No, it might be that it might be used up in, say, your muscles sooner. So if you just run a marathon, it might be taken out of your muscles, but gradually your body will distribute water from other places and evenly distribute it around your body. So it's more a case of where it's burned is more important. So you might use up water in your muscles sooner. But if you've got like an exam, you might be stressed and then you might be sweating and you lose water elsewhere. But this also feeds into the other question, which was about the gentleman who doesn't get hangovers.
Yeah. Well, you're not allowed to do that, sadly.
Okay.
I wish you were now, because I bet we don't find anyone who can, and I'm going to regret it for the rest of my life. Is there anything I can do with Kevin that would allow me to adopt some of his superpower? No, what a ridiculous question. What am I going to do? Lick his face or something and come away with his magic hangover-proof physiognomy?
The only option you've got is to drink a lot more alcohol, and gradually your liver will build up more enzymes to break down alcohol quicker.
So he's got a really good liver then?
So he's got really good stores.
But he was born with that, I think. He didn't sound like a massive drinker. Can you be born with it?
Yeah, you could be born with a bigger liver. Some people are just lucky they're born with a bigger liver, or they've got bigger stores of certain enzymes that break down.
Really? Oh no, you can. Yeah. I'm letting you carry on with this. It's too good to miss. So you and will he pass that on? Is that going to be hereditary?
Potentially.
Should have asked him about his parents, shouldn't I?
Yeah, I know. I need like a genetic biome for him to figure this out. But,
so do I.
Yeah, generally you just need a bigger liver.
Into my veins.
You might have enzymes which break down alcohol, and then as a result of that he's able to get rid of it quicker, but he might have a better response to alcohol, because when you're the morning after, when you're all dehydrated, it's because alcohol suppresses antidiuretic hormone, which is released by your kidneys, and when it's suppressed, your body just loses loads of water. That's why you pee loads when you've been drinking. And once the alcohol is broken down, gradually your antidiuretic hormone switches back on, and then you'll gradually retain fluid and rehydrate yourself.
So you're not weeing out all the alcohol and losing fluid with it, which is not ideal, but it's better than keeping the alcohol in your system. Okay, so that you've done that, and on the first question about there's not going to be a part of the body that is more dehydrated than another part of the body. There's going to be an equal spread of cell-based water depletion.
Pretty much, yeah. So you hold about 70% of your water in your cells.
No, you've done it, mate.
In tissue.
You've nailed it. You've nailed it. Qualifications. Massive
I am
boozer.
An alcoholic and a paramedic practitioner.
Round two. I need to give you 2 rounds of applause, so we should have got that bit back from Tim. He had too much. First one for Luke. I don't think we've ever done this before. Certainly not for 2 answers. And another one for Luke, because that was brilliant.
Wicked.
Thank you, mate. There you go. And a quick shout to John, who's been in touch with regards to getting an aesthetic kick out of microphones. He says, sorry, James, show me a 50s Newman U89 and I'm in a puddle. 10 to 1 is the time. Sheila Fogarty back from her confinement shortly. Until then, a couple more questions in need of answers and time for a couple more questions. So we'll do that first. Martin's in Coventry. Martin, question or answer?
It's a question. When it rains, why do wood pigeons sit out on rooftops, get wet, they sit still, and all of the birds disappear?
Are you sure about how much research have you done into this?
Quite a lot of research out of my kitchen window, looking at the flats opposite. They sit on the rooftops, on the aerials.
How do you know they're wood pigeons? Would they be wood pigeons or pigeons?
Yeah. No, not scroty feral pigeons.
They're proper wood pigeons. Like the
proper wood pigeons. Them ones. Yeah,
those pigeons.
Yeah.
And they stay outdoors, and all the other birds take shelter.
They seem to sit still on aerials, chimneys, rooftops. I say, the gutters over the road from me, and they just sit there in the rain. I think they go when it gets torrential rain, but if it's drizzle, light rain, they just sit there when everything else just disappears. You see everything else scoot off and disappear into the trees, and they just sit there.
Well, I never.
That's it.
That's it. You're on the list. I hope we get an answer. Well, wood pigeons. I wonder, do they get hangovers? Do they get hangovers? That's the big mystery of the day. I'm getting bombarded now. My dad and brother never get hangovers. That's got to hurt. That's got to hurt, hasn't it? I mean, not only because you might end up questioning your paternity. 12:52 is the time. Paul's in Gatwick. Paul, question or answer?
I've got an answer for you, James.
Let's go.
HCV one.
Oh, yeah.
Right. The reason they appear different, on the front, you have the steer axle that just has a single wheel. All the other wheels, they're doubled up.
Right.
So to get 2 wheels on the same axle, one wheel goes on the right way first way, and then the second wheel, the one you look at, is turned 180 degrees, almost face to face, goes on backwards. hence why the wheel nuts appear deeper inside, and it looks different. So it's
so they're the same wheels
to go on the same wheel.
The same.
Yeah, they're all the same wheels all around the vehicle.
Oh.
The front ones are the steer ones, and they're bolted on. The hub, as you see, the face of the wheel, slightly offset. It allows all the gubbins underneath the brake calipers and what have you to fit inside the wheel. So, imagine taking that wheel off and then reversing it.
And putting it back on again. So if you've got two wheels at the back, the inner wheel is the same, is sighted the same.
Goes on the same way.
As the front
the second wheel, the one you can see, goes on backwards.
So they're bump to bump. They're bump to bump then, as it were.
That's it. You've got it.
Qualifications?
HGV driver.
2 for 2. Round of applause for Paul. Lovely work, mate. That's not a bad question then in the end, was it, Paul? Given that we don't really
I know you don't like motoring
I don't.
questions, but I was driving and...
I don't mind motoring answers, Paul. So I don't want you to feel judged. It's the motoring questions I don't like. So John, frankly, was chancing his arm a bit there, but I won't lie, I'm glad he did. That was actually quite interesting. Thank you very much, Paul. Drive carefully, please. 12:54 is the time. Sean's in Ulster.
Hi there, James.
Ulster. Hi, Sean. Question or answer? Ulster.
Right,
Warwickshire.
first time.
Carry on.
An answer, please. And can I say, an absolute honour to speak to you.
Let's not get carried away. It's an absolute honour to speak to you too. What have we got?
Thank you. It's an answer, James, about the BSL question, which I thought was a cracker.
Yes.
It doesn't make any difference if the signer is signing a word in a foreign language or in English, because BSL is in itself its own language. It is a foreign language, effectively.
Right.
And BSL doesn't work on the premise of translating word for word.
Yes.
It's all about the meaning.
So there will either be a way of conveying what is conveyed by words like Saldage and Philoxenia in British Sign Language, or there won't.
Yes, exactly. But as long as the signer knows what that word means, they can get the meaning across. And you used a wonderful example before, Schadenfreude.
Yes,
and I was having a giggle to myself about that, because in BSL, what you do is point to away from yourself to an imaginary person, and show them with a miserable face.
Yeah,
and then you point to yourself and show yourself, and you say, but point to yourself. And you give yourself a smiley face.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
So, do you know what I just did?
Go on.
I just did it. I forgot I was on the radio. Well, obviously you can enjoy this programme on YouTube now, which reminds me, we haven't asked the question yet properly about why we derive such pleasure out of looking at beautiful things. I don't know why those two things keep popping up together in my mind. But I did literally just do the sign for Schadenfreude. Well, not really. It's pathetic. I've been on the radio for 20 years and I just forgot that no one can see me most of the time. What are your qualifications, Sean?
I've got a degree in French, and I happen to be married to a wonderful woman called Sally, who's been a qualified sign language interpreter for many, many years.
That's perfect qualifications then. Absolutely beautiful. Round of applause.
Pleasure. Thank you, James.
Oh, thank you. So I genuinely did that. Do you know Sheila's in the studio now? Welcome back. Nice to see you looking so well.
My confinement.
Your confinement is complete.
I should bring a baby
like
in
a Jane
with
Austen heroine. Do you know how to say Schadenfreude in British Sign Language?
Oh, no, I don't know.
Shall I show you?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I'm enjoying your misfortune here. So you're but it could be just a random person. You go like this.
That's good.
It's great, isn't it?
Yeah, no one can see us.
No, I know. Yeah. James is in Bayswater. James, question or answer?
I've got an answer for you, James.
I know that. I know that voice. I know those mellifluous tones I would recognise anywhere. It is the...
I'd like to think it's not that distinctive.
It is pretty distinctive, James, as you well know. James Wong, botanist and all-round good bloke. What have you got? I
can't sneak up on you. Well, the answer is about why we find certain views of the natural world instinctively attractive.
Yes.
And the answer is we don't find all views of the natural world instinctively attractive. We don't like, a ditch filled with cow mess and flies and, potential malaria.
Exactly.
We find very specific views exciting. And that's because we're genetically programmed to find the environments that are most suitable for our species. And it's the environment you see in pretty much any picturesque painting. The theory is called prospect and refuge.
Wow.
So there's always prospect, so there's always an open space, usually an open plain where we could find prey.
Yeah.
Or if it isn't animal food we'd be looking after, it'd be plant food. So universally we find flowers attractive. And the reason why we get excited about flowers is because they're the location of future fruit. So if you find flowers incredibly beautiful, you're likely, when you're wandering around on a plane, to remember where that was and go back to that location. So that's prospect. And then there's also refuge. So there's always a little protected bit. So you're hiding away from predators. There's always, in the part of the prospects, there's always fresh water because our species needs that. You mentioned waterfalls. Fresh running water is always preferable to stagnant water.
Oh, of course.
It's the basis of every painting you've ever seen of a natural landscape, every garden design. It's hardwired into our DNA.
Oh, man, that's one of my favourite answers of all time. That is a thing of beauty. Remind us of your qualifications, please, James.
So I am an ethnobotanist, and what we do is we are anthropologists that study how people use plants.
I mean, we've had a pretty special mystery out today, so we may as well go all in. I think, James, you get one of these.
I'm Ray Liotta, and you're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. If you
I'm framing it, and I'm sending it to my mum.
Thank you, James. Oh, dear. And if you enjoy James's work and his intelligence, really, and his knowledge as much as I do, then you must download and listen to the Full Disclosure episode that we did with him, I think last year, certainly a while ago, but it's all there in the archive. And that is it for another day. James got Ray Liotta, so we'll cross him off the list of contenders for the Mystery Hour board game. I think it's got to go to Luke, hasn't it? Who went double. I was tempted to give it to Alice. I don't know whether I've given Alice one before, but anyway, it goes to Luke for the double answer on hangovers and hydration. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen back. We didn't. Yes, we did as well, and that's we did. He didn't really explain why looking at people would be beautiful. But anyway, you can listen back on Catch Up on Global Player, where you can find all of LBC's shows to catch up on. That's just basic reproduction, isn't it? As well as the world's biggest podcasts. Rewind Live Radio on Global Player. Download for free from your app store or head to globalplayer.com. 4 o'clock, Tom Sawbrick. Sheila Fogarty back with you now. 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 Fogarty back with you now.